the defendant, Mr. Jordan, in a courthouse when you were 7 years old.
Yes.
And he was taken to court for child support.
Yes.
Claimed you as his daughter and began paying child support. Refused to treat you like his daughter.
A one-night stand, 32 years of silence, and one DNA test that shattered everything they thought they knew about love, family, and truth. In the echoes of a courtroom, where truth meets denial and memory clashes with time, unfolds a story that tests the meaning of fatherhood. This is not just a tale about science proving or disproving bloodlines. It's a human confession of pain, abandonment, and the desperate need to belong. For Shant Mitchell, the journey began not with anger but with absence. She had lived her life believing that the man who once stood in a courthouse and called her baby girl was her father, a promise born in front of a judge, yet broken in the silence that followed. When her mother died of breast cancer, that last link to identity vanished, leaving Shant with only one question echoing inside her: who am I really? She turned to the courtroom again, not for money, not for revenge, but for closure. Across from her sat Mr. Jordan, the man who had once raised his hand before a judge and claimed her as his child without a paternity test. He had paid child support, attended a few moments of her life, and walked away believing he was doing the right thing. But now, 32 years later, he sat before the truth machine, the DNA test, convinced it would clear his name forever. He spoke with a mix of calm defiance and weariness, recounting how he met her mother, how he believed it was just one night, a one-time affair, he said, and how he'd been caught between duty and doubt ever since. In his eyes, Shant was a reminder of a moment he never expected to define his life. Shant, though, wasn't seeking retribution. Her mother was gone, her childhood marked by questions that grew heavier with each unanswered call and each denial. She had tried to call him Dad once, and he told her to call him Jordan. That wound never healed. Behind her voice, trembling but strong, was a lifetime of rejection, birthdays missed, funerals where she stood unseen, the time her brakes failed on a freeway after he taught her how to fix her car herself. To her, it wasn't about broken machinery. It was about broken promises. For him, the story was simpler. He'd stepped up when the court asked, he said. He'd done his part, paid the money, and even tried to be there when she needed something. But love, to him, was a transaction of responsibility. For Shant, it was something deeper, something she had waited her entire life to feel. The tension grew sharper when his other daughter, Ms. Wagner, entered the courtroom, a woman fiercely loyal to the man she proudly called Daddy. Her presence turned the air electric. She defended him, claiming he was a good father, one who'd always been there since day one. The two women, Shant and Wagner, stood as mirrors of what each other lacked, one basking in the affection of a father's certainty, the other starving for acknowledgement. Their words clashed like two storms colliding, accusations, jealousy, pain, and years of resentment spilling out before the world. Wagner called her fake. Shant called her blind. The judge watched, holding the balance between fury and heartbreak. Through it all, Mr. Jordan remained still, his doubt unwavering. To him, science would soon end this story. He didn't believe in shared bloodlines, not yet. But as the judge spoke of loss, of losing her mother to breast cancer, of growing up without the anchor of family, the weight of empathy began to seep into the room. Even the judge's voice softened. I lost my mother too, she said, and I can't imagine what it feels like to not know your father. Shant's eyes glistened, not just from tears, but from decades of silence finally finding a place to breathe. For once, the pain was seen. When the DNA results arrived, the courtroom fell into a hush, the kind of silence that feels alive. Every breath waited for a number, a name, a truth. Mr. Jordan leaned forward, trying to look detached but betraying nervousness in his hands. Shant closed her eyes. Then came the words that split 32 years in half. "Mr. Jordan, you are her father." A tremor ran through the room. The man who had doubted, denied, and distanced himself, the man who once said, "We don't need a test," had just been confirmed by science. For Shant, the revelation was both vindication and heartbreak. "I just want him to treat me better," she whispered. She didn't want apologies, only presence, the kind she had waited her whole life for. And Mr. Jordan, once armed with denial, could no longer hide behind doubt. Yet his response was strikingly unemotional. "If she wants a relationship," he said, "it'll change." Conditional love wrapped in cautious distance. But for a daughter who had lived in the shadow of maybe, even that was something. The judge, weary yet wise, turned her words into a lesson for every parent watching. When life whispers doubt, go to DNA. Let truth be your answer before time takes your chance. But the story didn't end there. The episode turned, revealing another case, another life fractured by the same thread of uncertainty. This time, it was Jasmine Bronson, a woman who had grown up believing one man was her father, only to learn that her entire foundation might be a lie. For 29 years, she called Mr. Roberts dad. He raised her, loved her, disciplined her, paid child support, even went to jail for it. He was her anchor until her mother confessed that another man, Mr. Banks, might be her real father. That revelation shattered everything. Mr. Roberts felt betrayed not just by the woman he once loved, but by time itself. "I spent 8 months in jail for unpaid child support," he said, "and now I find out she might not even be mine." His voice cracked under the weight of confusion and loss. Mr. Banks, on the other hand, stood quiet, uncertain but hopeful. He remembered meeting Jasmine and her mother in a park when she was 6 or 7. Her mother had told him then, "This is your daughter." But life moved on, no contact, no follow-up, just a memory that haunted him for decades. For Jasmine, the truth was a ghost she couldn't escape. Her entire identity, every "I love you, Dad," was now under question. She had carried the secret since 2009, telling no one but her father's fiancé. How do you tell the man who raised you, who loved you, that he might not be your father? That guilt had aged her spirit. Now in court, the three of them stood within arm's reach. The man who raised her, the man who might be her biological father, and the woman torn between gratitude and confusion. Every line on Jasmine's face carried the burden of 2 lives colliding, the one she'd known, and the one she might inherit. As the judge said, "We test Bobbies to find their fathers before they can even remember this pain. But for people like you, Jasmine, grown adults who have lived with it, the scars are deeper." And as the results were revealed, one name erased, another affirmed, hearts broke quietly. "Mr. Roberts, you are not the father. Mr. Banks, you are the father." For a moment, Jasmine's world tilted. But what happened next became one of the most powerful moments in paternity court history. Mr. Roberts, the man proven not to be her father, turned to her, eyes full of love and tears, and said, "You'll always be my daughter. I love you." And in that one sentence, the meaning of fatherhood shifted forever. The courtroom, though quiet now, carried the echo of something sacred, not victory, not defeat, but revelation. When Jasmine heard Mr. Roberts' voice, the man who had just learned she wasn't his biological daughter, she didn't move at first. Her face trembled, not from shock, but from a tenderness that had waited for years to be spoken aloud. He looked at her not as proof denied, but as love proven. "You'll always be my daughter," he said again, this time softly, like a father whispering to his child in the dark. And for the first time since her world had splintered, Jasmine smiled through tears. It was in that moment that everyone in the courtroom understood. DNA defines blood, but it cannot define devotion. Biology may name you, but love raises you. Still, as Mr. Banks, the biological father, approached her with tears in his eyes, the reality of truth met the complexity of emotion. He had always believed deep inside that she might be his. He said it gently, "I love you and I always will. I just didn't know how to reach you." His voice cracked, heavy with years of lost chances. Jasmine hesitated. This man was both stranger and family, a face she'd seen in dreams, a presence that haunted the corners of her identity. When he asked for a hug, she paused, then nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It was understanding. As he wrapped his arms around her, the courtroom exhaled. It wasn't the reunion of two people who knew each other. It was the meeting of two lives separated by silence and the cruelty of circumstance. For the first time, Jasmine stood between the father who raised her and the man whose blood she carried, and somehow, in that space, she became whole. The judge, her voice gentle yet firm, reminded them all, "You see, both of these men believed you were their daughter, and both of them came here today for truth, not to run from it, but to face it. And that's something rare." Truth in that courtroom didn't destroy families. It revealed them. Mr. Roberts, once angry at the years of deception, no longer looked at Mr. Banks with resentment. Instead, there was an unspoken respect between them, two men who had loved the same child in different ways. He said quietly, "I'm glad she has another person to love her. We can share that." That line, simple yet profound, captured the essence of fatherhood. For 30 years, the world had told Jasmine that she could only have one father. But now she knew the truth: love doesn't divide, it multiplies. Outside the courtroom, Jasmine reflected on the years she had spent trapped between truth and loyalty. "I used to look in the mirror," she said, "and wonder who I really looked like. Now I know it doesn't matter. I'm both of them." And in a way, she was right. One man gave her life, another gave her living. But beneath the relief and healing that unfolded in that case, another story, the first one, the story of Shant and Mr. Jordan, continued to echo in the minds of those who witnessed it. When the judge read the results confirming Mr. Jordan as Shant's biological father, the courtroom had erupted into disbelief. Even Mr. Jordan's loyal daughter, Ms. Wagner, stood frozen for a moment before turning away, her confidence in her father's words suddenly fragile. For years, Wagner had believed her father's doubts. She had seen her half-sister as an outsider, an intruder in their family's truth. But when DNA spoke, that truth turned inside out. Now she was the one standing in uncertainty. The sister she had dismissed, the woman she had argued with, was not a stranger after all. She was blood. The judge had seen this moment play out countless times: two women, divided by doubt, now forced together by biology. "You don't have to like her," the judge said softly, "but you do have to respect what's written in your DNA." For Mr. Jordan, however, the revelation was heavier. It wasn't just about being proven wrong. It was about confronting the weight of 32 years of denial. He had missed birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and laughter, all because he chose not to believe. In one moment, he had gone from doubt to fatherhood. But time, that cruel thief, had already stolen what mattered most. Still, as Shant sat there, tears streaming down her face, she didn't gloat or rage. She simply looked at him and whispered, "All I ever wanted was for you to see me." It wasn't a demand. It was a plea from a child who had grown old waiting. For him, those words were sharper than any verdict. The man who had once prided himself on being a good man now had to face what goodness truly meant: not payments, not responsibility, but presence. And yet, even with the truth revealed, the road ahead wasn't easy. Mr. Jordan's voice, steady but uncertain, said, "If she wants things to change, I'll make them change." But there was a shadow behind the words, a man still struggling to bridge 3 decades of emotional distance. The judge's final words cut through the tension. "You see, the thing about truth is it doesn't just set you free. It demands something from you. Now that you know, you have a responsibility to act like it." Mr. Jordan nodded quietly. Shant, holding her letter, the one she had written to him before the results, folded it in her hands. The letter that began with "Dear Dad" no longer sounded like a question. It was finally an answer. Both cases, Shant's and Jasmine's, stood as 2 sides of the same coin. One woman gained a father she'd been denied. Another lost the father she had always known. Yet both discovered something deeper. That identity isn't written in ink or cells, it's written in experience, in love, in truth. For Shant, the DNA test had given her what her heart had longed for: confirmation. But it also gave her something harder, the task of forgiving a man who had ignored her existence. The cameras caught her after the show, quietly saying, "I guess now I have to learn how to love a father I never had." For Mr. Jordan, the test stripped away his excuses. The man who once hid behind uncertainty now faced the responsibility of rebuilding a relationship he'd never built to begin with. His daughter, Ms. Wagner, still protective but shaken, would have to share her father's love, not out of generosity, but out of truth. And for Jasmine, the revelation brought its own peace. She would forever cherish the man who raised her, but she also found a piece of herself in the man who had searched for her. "Maybe," she said, "I was meant to have 2 fathers, one who taught me how to live, and one who showed me where I came from." Her words carried the weight of grace, the rare kind that comes from seeing pain as part of a larger design. Weeks after the verdicts, both families continued to navigate the new versions of their lives. Mr. Jordan began calling Shant short, hesitant calls at first. Birthdays remembered. Small talks about weather, about work, about her daughter. It wasn't much, but it was more than the silence that came before. Shant, for her part, didn't push. "I don't want perfection," she said in an interview later. "I just want effort. I waited 32 years. I can wait a little longer if he's really trying." Her words carried a quiet strength, not bitterness, not desperation, just the resolve of someone who has finally stopped begging for love and started recognizing her own worth. Mr. Roberts and Jasmine's story unfolded differently. Despite the DNA test, he continued to attend her children's school events, birthdays, and holidays. "It doesn't matter what the paper says," he told reporters. "I changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike, stayed up with her through heartbreaks. That's not biology, that's fatherhood." And Mr. Banks, the newly confirmed biological father, entered Jasmine's life gently, respectfully. "I don't want to replace anyone," he said. "I just want a chance to know her." It wasn't an instant bond, but it was honest. And honesty, for people who had lived with secrets, was finally enough. What made these stories unforgettable wasn't just the courtroom drama. It was the reflection of real life in its rawest form. Because for every Shant and Jasmine, there are millions of children and parents around the world who carry the same question in silence. Do I really belong? The DNA test, for all its precision, can't measure pain or longing. It can't erase the memories of birthdays missed or hugs withheld. But it can start something new, a conversation, a reconciliation, a truth that gives birth to healing. Paternity court didn't just resolve disputes. It redefined what family means in an age where truth is scientific, but love is spiritual. It showed that family isn't always found, sometimes it's rebuilt. And in the quiet moments after the cameras stopped rolling, when the lights dimmed and the audience left, what remained wasn't the verdict, It was the people. Broken, flawed, and human, trying to stitch together what time had torn apart. As the judge once said in another episode, DNA doesn't make you a father. Doing the right thing does. In the aftermath of truth, what remains is not the courtroom applause or the DNA paper sealed in an envelope. It's the silence that follows. The silence where love, guilt, and memory all collide, and where every parent and child begins to ask, what now? For Shant, the days following the verdict were heavier than she expected. For years, she had imagined the moment she'd hear those words, "He is your father." She thought it would feel like homecoming, like peace. But when it finally came, it felt like standing at the door of a house she'd never been invited into. Her heart ached with a question that truth couldn't answer. How do you build love from the ruins of denial? She found herself replaying moments from her childhood, birthdays where she blew out candles alone, wondering if he was thinking about her, letters she wrote but never sent, the sound of her mother's voice saying, "He'll come around one day." Now she knew he could have come. He just didn't. And yet when she looked in the mirror now, she saw more than pain. She saw resemblance, the shape of his eyes, the curve of his smile. Proof that she belonged somewhere, even if that place was fractured. In interviews, she spoke softly, without bitterness. "I forgive him, not because he earned it, but because I need peace. I lost my mother, I lost years of love, and I can't lose myself too." Forgiveness, she discovered, wasn't an event. It was a decision she had to make every morning. Mr. Jordan, on the other hand, struggled in silence. For the first time in decades, his certainty had been replaced with reflection. He had lived believing he was a good man, responsible, honest, practical. But now he faced the mirror of his own avoidance. He had told himself doubt was reason enough to stay away, that uncertainty was protection. But it was only fear disguised as logic. In quiet moments, he caught himself replaying her words, "I just want you to treat me better as a daughter." That sentence haunted him. He started calling more often. At first it was awkward, small talk, polite silences, nervous laughter. But beneath every call was an unspoken truth. This is what should have been happening 25 years ago. He began sending birthday gifts. Not grand gestures, just small, thoughtful ones. A card with her name written in his handwriting. A framed photo of her as a child that he found tucked away in an old drawer. For a man who had spent decades building walls, these were cracks of light. And slowly, she began to answer more warmly. The first "Hey, Dad," she said on the phone didn't sound forced, it sounded earned. Wagner, his other daughter, had her own reckoning. For years, she had been the favorite, the one who received what Shant never did: time, affection, attention. But when she saw the DNA results, she realized how easily love can become bias. "I didn't like her," Wagner admitted later. "I thought she was lying, trying to steal something that was mine. But the truth is, she wasn't stealing anything. She was just claiming what was already hers." The two sisters began speaking again, cautiously at first, with laughter hiding old pain. They would never undo years of resentment overnight, but they started to learn that bloodline wasn't a competition. It was connection. Meanwhile, across another city, Jasmine Bronson's life had also changed, but in a very different way. Her story wasn't about discovery, it was about duality. Two fathers, one heart. The DNA had confirmed what her mother's words had hinted, that Mr. Banks was her biological father. But the man who raised her, Mr. Roberts, refused to let a lab report erase 3 decades of fatherhood. He told her after the show, "You're still my baby girl. I don't care what that paper says." That statement, simple yet profound, became the defining moment of her healing. In the weeks that followed, both men reached out to her, not with rivalry but with respect. They understood that love didn't need to be exclusive. It could be shared as long as it was honest. Mr. Banks began showing up for family dinners, birthdays, and even quiet coffee mornings where he and Jasmine would talk about what could have been. He spoke about the guilt he carried, about not searching harder, not questioning more, not fighting to be present when her mother told him she was his. "I thought she'd come find me one day," he confessed, "but I realize now it was always my job to find her." Mr. Roberts, on the other hand, embraced the bittersweet truth with quiet dignity. "God gave her to me for a reason," he said. "Even if science says she's not mine, my heart says otherwise, and that's enough." Jasmine, caught between two worlds, found herself no longer torn but grateful. "I used to feel broken," she said. "Now I feel doubled, 2 fathers, 2 lives, 2 chances to be loved." As both families adjusted, the public's reaction to their stories revealed something deeper about human nature. Viewers didn't just see drama, they saw themselves. Parents who had walked away saw the cost of absence. Children who'd been denied saw hope in the courage to seek truth. And everyone saw that love, real love, begins where pride ends. Social media overflowed with comments from people who had been through similar pain. One woman wrote, "I found my father at 40. The DNA confirmed it, but hearing him say my name for the first time was what made it real." Another wrote, "This show isn't about tests, it's about hearts trying to come home." And that's exactly what these stories were, journeys home, no matter how long the road or how late the arrival. In the heart of these stories lies a universal truth, that we are all shaped by the people who claim us, and scarred by the ones who don't. Shant's life was defined by absence, yet she turned that pain into strength. Her forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was the ultimate act of self-liberation. Jasmine's life was defined by revelation, yet she turned confusion into gratitude. She learned that truth doesn't have to destroy what love has already built. And the fathers, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Banks, all stood as reflections of flawed humanity. Men who made choices, good or bad, but still had the courage to face them. Mr. Jordan learned that doubt is not protection, it's paralysis. Mr. Roberts learned that fatherhood doesn't end when DNA disagrees. Mr. Banks learned that love, even delayed, can still matter. Together, their stories formed a mosaic of truth, painful, beautiful, and real. Months later, the judge from Paternity Court reflected on both cases in an interview. Her words captured the heart of what these stories meant to the world. "Every time I read those results, I see more than science. I see redemption, I see regret, I see love trying to find its way back through years of silence. And I always say this, DNA tells you who the father is, but love tells you who the dad is." She spoke about how each verdict leaves behind 2 kinds of truths, one written in paper, one written in hearts. And sometimes the latter is the one that saves people. Years down the line, both stories found their quiet endings. Shant and Mr. Jordan attended therapy together. Their sessions weren't about fixing the past, they were about learning to speak without accusation, to replace "you weren't there" with "I'm glad you're here now." Her forgiveness didn't erase the years, but it gave meaning to the ones ahead. Wagner, once protective and defensive, became her sister's ally. "We fought like strangers," she said once, "but now I call her every week, because blood doesn't just connect us, it reminds us not to waste time." Mr. Jordan, growing older, finally understood that love delayed was still better than love denied. When asked what he'd tell other men like him, he said, Don't wait for proof to love your child. Love them first. Let proof come later. As for Jasmine, life blossomed in a quieter way. Mr. Banks became part of her extended family, a man she now called Dad, not to replace, but to add. Mr. Roberts continued to be her pops, the constant in her children's lives. When asked how she balanced two fathers, she smiled. You don't balance love, you just make room for it. Her story wasn't about losing a father. It was about gaining another, and realizing there's no limit to how many people can love you if you let them. In the end, both stories remind us that the human heart is not built to live in denial. Truth, no matter how late it arrives, carries the power to heal what silence breaks. A one-night stand can create life. A lifetime of distance can destroy connection. But one moment of truth can rebuild it all. It can take 32 years to say the words, "You are my father." It can take one heartbeat to forgive the years that were lost. And it can take just one sentence, whispered through tears, to redefine love forever. You'll always be my child. Final reflection. In the world of paternity tests and courtroom drama, the greatest discovery isn't biological, it's emotional. It's realizing that love doesn't belong to the perfect. It belongs to the brave. The brave ones who show up despite fear. The brave ones who forgive despite pain. The brave ones who look into the eyes of a stranger and say, "You are mine." For every Shant, every Jasmine, every parent and child separated by doubt, the message remains timeless. Truth may change what you know, but it never has to change who you love.